I'm Kyle Zeyer. I'm here to talk about efforts to protect the Welsh's milkweed on the sandhills in the Kanab field office. So Welsh's milkweed is the rare federally listed as threatened Welsh's milkweed, species welshii, grows on sand dunes in only a few places in southern Utah and northern Arizona.
I'm Marc Coles-Ritchie. I'm the ecologist at the BLM here in Kanab, Utah. I work with Kyle Zeyer, who's a backcountry ranger, and I encouraged him to do this presentation about efforts to protect this rare plant. And because I have experience in botany, I offered to help do a few of the slides in this presentation. In this map, you can see the distribution of Asclepias welshii is very limited. It's just the pink color, where the pink color is at the bottom of this image on the Utah-Arizona border. That's Kane County, where we work at Grand Staircase and the Kanab field office, and the plant is found a little bit in Arizona as well. I want to recognize that numerous people have been studying this plant for many years, including Susan Meyer, recently retired from the Forest Service, who presented last year at this rare plant meeting about this same plant, Asclepias welshii. And other folks from the BLM, such as Carson Gubler and others, have been studying this plant, as well as other researchers. I also want to acknowledge that it was named by Pat and Noel Holmgren, who I believe are in the audience today. Welsh's milkweed is a striking plant where it grows in these sand dunes that seem so barren, yet they still produce amazing plant life. Welsh's milkweed is a perennial plant. It's herbaceous, meaning the above ground parts die and disappear in the winter as they are blown away by the wind. The stems are upright, a few feet tall. They have underground stems or rhizomes that spread out and allow them to send up new shoots each spring. Last year, Susan Meyer, in her presentation about this plant, noted that she documented rhizomes that were as much as 200 feet long, which is very impressive. The flowers are the typical spherical cluster of flowers that milkweeds have, and they have seed pods with the kind of cottony, hairy seeds that blow in the wind. The leaves are an oval shaped, and they're kind of a whitish color because of the hairs that grow on them. After milkweed has flowered in the summertime, later in the season, it senesces. The above ground parts of the plant die and shrivel, and the seeds disperse in the wind. You can see pictures of the seeds there in the pod in the middle and up close on the right. And then the plant sort of disappears and is no longer visible on the sand dune because it blows away, making it vulnerable to vehicles driving on it, not being aware that the plant is still there in the form of the underground rhizomes. The milkweed that this plant might be confused with, in that it grows closest to the Welsh's milkweed, is Asclepias latifolia. Asclepias latifolia would not be found in sand dunes, so that's one clue. In addition, the leaves of Asclepias latifolia are less hairy, giving them a more green appearance, as you can see in the photo. In addition, the follicles or the seed pods of Asclepias latifolia are more erect compared to Asclepias welshii. This screenshot from Susan Meyer's presentation last year shows in the center, the larger image, a seedling of Asclepias welshii, and it doesn't look anything like the mature plant that has the round or oval-shaped leaves. The seedling has these long linear leaves that are not very dramatic, and they would not be very visible on the sand dune in the spring when they are just beginning to grow. The top left image shows a sprout from the rhizome that looks more typical of the leaves of the mature Welsh's milkweed.
So the situation with increased popularity to southern Utah, and specifically to Peekaboo Slot Canyon in the Sand Hills area of the Kanab field office, many more tour companies and many more people were headed to Peekaboo. On the way to Peekaboo, vehicles would go off designated routes to ride on the sand dunes where Welsh's milkweed grows. Recreationists were inadvertently damaging this rare plant. So we had some management concerns. Vehicle traffic has been damaging this milkweed by driving off the designated routes. With increased traffic to Peekaboo Canyon, this put an added strain on Welch's milkweed. So with limited vegetation in the sand hills and limited natural barriers, this route has always been a challenging one to mark. So this is a map that we shared with tour guides that were using this area to get to Peekaboo Canyon. If you can see the areas in red were the off-route areas where the Welsh's milkweed would be at risk and where we were seeing problems. The orange route is where the designated route where they're supposed to be driving, and there's a couple green lines there, and those were primarily where we put the barriers in to try to define the route. Some of the routes off of the main route were getting so well used they became their own undesignated road that wasn't supposed to be there. In places like this, we built a fence with rails and signage. So in areas that were more wide open with vegetation, we put in cedar posts with large metal signs identifying the route, just trying to define the space. So this process actually took a couple weeks, and once we did that, we wanted to educate the tour companies. They were the ones that used this road most often and would be the ones that would be impacted by this the most. So we had a map that we got that we sent to them that we showed you earlier. Then we also communicated with them through meetings and in the field to try to educate them on the protecting of this plant and where the road should be. So has it worked? Early indications is that behavior is changing and that people are staying off the areas that they're not supposed to and staying on the designated route. We do have buy-in from the guide companies who made up a majority of traveling in this area. Further research will be needed. What's next? Well, rangers like me will continue to monitor the area to see whether vehicles are staying on the road and off the dunes and looking for incursions. We'll look for different photo points. We want to make sure that we maintain the barriers, continue to educate the guides and the tour companies, and we do want to put in some more durable signage. Again, research would be really helpful. Research that we would like to do is to see how effective these barriers are at keeping vehicles off of the dunes. Is the milkweed increasing or not? How are other plants, and animals for that matter, responding to this protective effort?
As Kyle said, we are interested in having research done on the effectiveness of these barriers at keeping vehicles off the sand dunes where the Welsh's milkweed grows. We want to see if this effort helps to increase the population of this rare plant. I'm the science coordinator for the Prairie River District, and I can help with the permit process. If you're interested in doing this kind of research, you can contact Kyle or myself.